Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the, what day is it, March 4th, 2020 Abington Finance Committee meeting. Tonight we are continuing our series of meetings with town department heads. Tonight we have the assessor's office, we have the water department, and we will also have the planning board. So we can start right away. We have Yolanta Griffith, is it Griffith? From the new town deputy assessor. Russ doesn't need his own mic. Turn that towards you.
Like you said, my name is Yolanta Griffith. I am the new assessor. I started last August.
Welcome. I think we'll go around and introduce ourselves to you.
I'm Greg Belzerian.
Hi, Greg. Nice
Katie
to meet you.
Pullman.
Hi, Katie.
Joe Horace.
Hi, Joe.
I'm Barbara Wright.
Hi.
Matt Zolla.
Yeah.
Russ Fuller.
Hello.
Justin Van Nist.
Nice
Hello.
to meet you all.
And Deb is our secretary,
Yep.
who I'm sure you know.
Okay, would you like me to start with the first item on my budget?
That'd be great. We are on, for the committee, we are on page 9 in our packets.
Okay, the first item on my budget is salaries. I have a full-time administrative assistant, Jody, and I also have a part-time clerk, Joe. He works 20 hours. Their salaries are on the right. Those are contractual. They do include attendance bonus pay, personal day bonus, and vacation buyback. Those are amounts that are negotiated through the union.
Yep.
And then there is me with the 2% increase.
The admin's part-time? Or full-time?
She is full-time, the clerk is part-time, he's 20
Okay.
hours, yeah. Under expenses, most of them have no changes. The first one is education and training. That includes continuing education classes, seminars, spring and fall conferences, recertification courses that I have to take. Then we have technical and professional appropriations, and those are the vendors. We have Vision Government Solution. We have RSC, who does our personal property. Then we have maps and deeds. You'll notice a 30% difference there. That's because we're doing an adjustment to get in line with the fiscal year, because the way Vision billed, the work that was done in one year wasn't billed till the following fiscal year. Therefore, we're trying to do an adjustment, so from now on, there is no going in between two fiscal years.
Okay.
That would be good.
Yes.
And it looks like it's going to the same number that it was in fiscal year 19.
Correct. Yeah. Then we have assessors postage. We mail income and expense statements, we mail exemptions, we mail forms of lists to businesses, sales questionnaires on new sales of homes, abatement certificates. So we do a lot of mailing, and that has not changed. It's 1,700. Office supplies is the same. Then assessors gas. I do have a town car that I use when I go out on building permits. So the first item is for the gas and oil. Then car supplies such as maintenance, they do on the car, oil changes, stuff like that. Other supplies is tools of the trade, such as the camera, if I need a new measuring stick, stuff like that. Travel and budget, those are travel-related expenses for conferences. I have a couple conferences that I have to go to in order to keep up my certification credits. And dues and fees, just assessor dues and fees that I have to pay yearly.
So there's a travel budget for conferences and an educational budget, is that correct?
Yes.
So is the educational fees for the
Educational-
conferences?
Educational is,
Education and training budget.
on the first page, education is and training is for the classes, for seminars, classes, recertification courses, spring and fall conferences. There are others, sometimes the Department of Revenue will hold like a information seminar on changes that are happening at the Department of Revenue, new laws and stuff like that, where the other one covers expenses for travel if we have to stay overnight.
Okay, usually that's all part of the education and training budget, but thank you for that.
If you would like us to bulk it together, maybe we could.
That's what
I think they do it out separate because sometimes, yeah, all of it.
So you can say, this is what we pay for the training and seminars, and this is what we pay for mileage
Lodging and-
lodging
yeah.
and tolls, so it's separate
Yep.
in everybody's budget.
Okay. Thank you, Sue.
Do we have other questions, Barbara?
Is it a valuation year? Or when was
This
our
year-
last valuation year?
Every year, we do what's called an interim year adjustment, so we always look at the values and do a small adjustment. For fiscal year '21, we have a full revaluation, and the Department of Revenue is allowing the towns to go from a 3-year to a 5-year. So we are going on a 5-year reval, so after fiscal year '21, we will not have another one till fiscal year '26.
Okay, because usually the budget goes up for the reevaluation, what goes up for the revaluations,
You mean the vendors, the vision?
yes. Usually we are paying more out for contracted work for that, no?
Well, we have 30,000 for vision, and that's gonna cover our reval. I have checked with my vendors to make
Okay.
sure we are on track, and we are. Last week, we already started the work. RRC, which does our personal property, they already came out and took all the forms of lists, and they're going out around town listing all the personal property. Also, Vision is coming out next week to start the cyclical inspections. Every 9 years, we have to get into every single house in Abington. So they're gonna start that process next week. So we are really ahead of the game this year, really early. Usually that doesn't start till almost May. And we are early March, and we already doing it, so.
Excellent.
And we also meeting with our advisor from the Department of Revenue on the 19th of this month.
This one.
Yeah, so we really doing good. We're really ahead this year.
Excellent.
Hi, Joe.
Joe, how are you?
Good, I just came up to, in case given the fact that it's Yolanda's first meeting, I just came up for moral support.
Thank you.
Thanks for
I
coming.
thought it was a 7:15.
No, 7, sorry.
We were trying to trick you.
That was Greg. All Greg. He's usually early, so. Does anyone have other questions for Yolanda or for Joe?
Does the car stay here when you're not using it?
The car stays here, yeah. I only use it when I go out to do field work.
Is it in good working order? I'm just curious about the, like, $1,250 for supplies for the car
Well,
per
right
year.
now,
Is that a lot, or is that enough, or is it too much?
I think that's enough. Right now, I have a left brake light that's out, and the, when you turn left and right, what do you call those?
Blinker?
The
Yeah.
blinkers are kind of off.
I
Okay.
just lost
One
mine just
side,
now.
one side is like really fast, and the other side is really slow. But
We're
it
we're in
works.
Massachusetts. I'm surprised we knew the answer.
Those are illegal in Massachusetts. What year is the car?
I'm not sure.
That's why I just.
I think it was previously a police vehicle.
It was a police vehicle, I know that, probably maybe in 90s. I'm
Oh,
not
so
sure.
it's pretty old.
It's pretty old, yeah.
They slapped some new paint on it and
Yeah.
stuck
With a big
an emblem and.
It's like new.
Now, that was actually to be the Board of Health vehicle. Turned over a couple years ago, but the health agent prefers not to use a town vehicle. So it was just as easy to have the lines of the agent have.
Cool.
Is that usually what happens with the departments that need vehicles, that just, they get the hand-me-downs from the ones that have them?
Mhm.
Someday we'll get electric vehicles for non-public.
Like the bucket truck that the highway department uses for the tree trimming. They were talking about it not being
Former.
high enough. That was previously a bucket truck for the fire department.
Ah.
It was theirs, and then they got new,
Nothing.
the,
But as we discussed last week, the highway department does an excellent job of keeping the vehicles up and running
Yeah.
and maintaining them
and repurposing them.
and repurposing them.
Absolutely.
So is that what these fees are for, is for paying the
Paying the highway department.
to?
Correct, yes.
Yep.
Like if I need an oil
So we're not using like a
change,
third party, who's just internal?
Yeah.
Jack and his crew.
Anyone have anything else?
Well, it was nice to meet you all.
Yolanda, thank you
Nice
very
to meet
much.
you.
Very nice to meet you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, look forward to working with you.
thanks for coming, for
Thank
moral
you.
support.
Thank you, Joe, for coming.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, I'm not- oh, I had a copy, it's not the first thing.
What page are we on for water?
For water, we are going to page 74, and we have our water commissioner for the Abington Rockland Joint Water Works, water superintendent, Joe Lapointe. First year as
Joe,
the
yeah.
superintendent, coming to us without Dan.
But it's gotta be kinda like old hat, because you've been there for,
Yeah.
how many years have you been with the water
26.
department?
74.
Thank you. These are just the way we break down the budget.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
The next one.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
With the joint waterworks, we have to establish our joint budget first. I don't know if anybody's new to the board.
We do have a
We do
couple
have
of-
some new, yeah, some maybe.
Justin is new.
The joint budget runs all our treatment. We have 3 treatment plants that we run. One of them's always running 24/7, 365 days a year. We have 22 employees. Everything, all the wages, salaries, insurances, everything comes out of the joint budget. And it trickles down to the Abington and Rockland budget and percentages. We'll get to that when we get through it. So just to show you our joint budget for this year, the wages and salaries, contractual, are gonna be going up 69,272. Employee benefits are going up 30,000. That consists of health insurance and retirement and everything. Everything else, office supplies, everything's staying the same. Electricity costs run all the plants. The fuel cost is heating all the plants. Chemical costs naturally for treating the water. Our lab cost, we have to send everything out to be tested. The systems maintenance is preventive maintenance in the plants, anything breaks down, whatever, is systems maintenance and equipment maintenance, basically all in one. Building maintenance is, keeping the grounds up and roofs and everything else. Vehicle maintenance is just, there's 2 treatment vehicles they use to drive around, take samples, do checks on all the stations. Consulting is our engineering firms. Then we got the workman's comp and insurance, which is going up 40,000. If you notice in FY19, the last couple of years, we budgeted 100,000. It's actually been 136,000, so we upped it to 40,000, upped it to 140 this year. Hopefully that'll cover it. Taxes and miscellaneous. We have to pay the town of Pembroke taxes for our treatment plant and reservoirs that we have down there. A lot of that comes out of that line item.
The workman's comp insurance, that's just insurances or paying out workman's comp?
Workman's comp and the insurance is just like liability insurance, our workman's
Yeah.
comp insurance, stuff like that.
How do we not know what that is in the beginning of the year?
I won't know
Meaning-
what it is for FY21.
Got it.
You
they
you
do have
use an
Yep.
estimate.
This is for FY21.
So it basically just switches when I,
Yeah, you use an estimate because you don't have your policies written and completed at this point.
I
They do
know
an
the
audit
workman's
based on the
comp.
number of employees that you have and the number of claims that you had the previous year.
Got
it.
So then the
So,
next
yeah.
year is adjusted based
If I have a
on-
lot of claims, then naturally it's gonna go.
yeah, it changes. Got it, thanks.
So then, once we get our total budget, we do a split, and we figure out, if you flip quickly to the last page of that package, not the last page, the next to the last page, what we do is the consumption of water that was used in the FY19, because FY20, we haven't got those numbers yet. So we take our total commitments, we subtract our abatements, which is money we have to give back, it's a false reading or whatever.
There's like elderly abatements too, right? Is there like
Well-
age-related abatements that people can get?
Yeah, we'll get into that in a
Okay.
little bit, because that has to change. If you look halfway down, there's the Abington, the water Rockland uses, the water Abington uses. We take total amount that we brought in, we subtract the number of accounts by 4 quarters, by the $42 a quarter, that's a basic charge. So that gives us a dollar amount, and we can turn that into 100 cubic feet of water, that's how we charge for the water. So in FY19, Rockland used 54% of the water, Abington used 46% of the water. So in FY21, Rockland will be paying 56 of that, 54% of that joint budget, Abington will be paying 46. That's on the bottom of the first page, you'll see how much the actual budget for Abington and Rockland's gonna be, and the money difference in that budget. And this all carries over to what we'll be looking at under the Abington budget, which is under the intermunicipal line item. Any questions on the joint before we move to the Abington?
Questions?
I did, well, never mind.
Go ahead.
Oh, wait. Do you, I was just, the system maintenance or equipment maintenance, do you have, like the sewer department has like an alarm that'll go off if something's wrong?
Absolutely.
So you have alarms that if something's wrong with the water or the,
Absolutely. Our, we call it our SCADA system. One plant always is running. We can remotely run plants from that one plant as we're running it, so one person will work overnight, but we could actually run 2 plants. Everything's on the SCADA system, low pH alarms, low chlorine alarms, anything in the treatment process that'll set off an alarm goes to the primary operator's telephones and the operator that's on call, which is usually the one that's working. So anything like that happens, it's all alarmed. And if the water tank's filling up too much, the
Yeah.
alarm will come on to shut the pump off.
so you know about it right away. It's not like things go for days
Correct.
without being.
Yeah. Everything has to be monitored, all has to be recorded. In case something does happen, we can go step by step with DEP on what went wrong, hopefully.
Just a question on, I might be reading this wrong. The expended year-to-date line item, one in the middle there, those are pretty far off. of-
That's because they were that was in October.
Yeah, so there's 2 more months, right?
No, because the
No.
fiscal year runs.
Fiscal year
July
starts
to-
in July.
Got it, all right.
Yeah.
So
I'm thinking
October
2
was
months
only-
after this.
Yeah.
That was basically 2 months. into
October
our
was
year.
only
They-
three
Got it.
months.
August and
in.
September.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Those were just numbers we had when we started the
Yeah,
budget.
yeah.
We put it in.
Thank you.
They could have, maybe next year I'll update them before I get in there.
Yeah, no, I just,
That's the way we
I was
just did
thinking it
it.
ended in December, so I'm like, you have basically less than 2 months. How do you use all that money?
I wish.
July to end of June.
Yeah, July, June.
So the second page on my packet is basically the Abington budget. I don't know if you want to go with the budget you're looking at. It's the same. The one you guys, I have through the Abington town. Salaries for the Abington budget, the $7,500. That's for police details. If we use we might use the highway department sometimes for water breaks, and we bring them in, we pay their overtime. Anything like that, basically, is the salaries from the town of Abington. The town of Abington is just responsible basically for the infrastructure of Abington. That's the only thing that comes out of the budget besides the intermunicipal. The expenses, vehicle maintenance and repairs, $20,000 at the Abington dump truck. We have 5 pickup trucks that are with the town of Abington. Those are the repairs and parts that we pay for the trucks. Luckily, with the Abington trucks, we do use the highway department too, and they're great, and they save us a lot of money, you know.
So it's 6 vehicles?
Yes, counting treatment. Total, I think we have, between the town of Rockland and Abington, I think there's 14 altogether. Repair and maintenance appropriation, that's for our contract labor, pipes, fittings, meters, any accessories that we use for the infrastructure. If we have a water break or whatever, you know, the underground pipes, the fittings to fix them. The postage, these are all staying the same. This is my first rodeo, so hopefully I keep the numbers right, but I look back at past budgets and it seems like they work all right, so. Other services budget is basically engineering, legal fees. We do a lot of computer work out of that line item too, if we have to replace one of the computers or whatever. Office supplies, speaks for itself. Gas and oil is for the vehicles, that's staying the same. The intermunicipal charge, seems like it dropped a significant amount, but it really did not. The reason being, I guess the last couple of years, there was an issue with Plymouth County Retirement that we owed money to
Yeah,
Rockland.
that's right. That we had to pay it out over
We
a
had
few
to pay it
years.
out over a few
Retirement.
years, so it makes me look like a hero that that's down 15%, but it actually should be up 3% if you look back at the joint.
That was a situation-
It's up 3% for the yearly budget, but we're
Correct.
done repaying Rockland
Correct.
for the retirement.
Yeah, that was a situation where Rockland had somehow in error paid our portion of the retirement. And so then we had to pay them back. I think it was over the course of
I think it was 4 or 5
4 or
years.
5 years, something like that.
So,
So we're done paying that off to them. Abington is done paying to
correct.
Rockland.
And I've already billed Abington for this year's. Last year, we ran into an issue where it got billed at the end of June. So when they reimbursed Rockland, it didn't come till after the fiscal year had ended. So it looked like my Rockland budget was underfunded by $200 and something thousand because
Of the time.
411 was supposed to be split, and it was not. So we got ahead of it this year and already got our number from Plymouth County, and we did the split with Abington Rockland and already did.
So just to clear, the overall, taking aside the savings from not having to repay Rockland, we're up about 3% in that budget.
Correct.
But factoring in not having to repay Rockland, we're down about 15%.
15%, just on that payment.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Because the up 3% we would expect,
Mhm.
the down 15%
Like I
is
said,
nice to
being
have.
my first rodeo, I kind of left everything the same in the joint and there,
Yep.
except for the contractual stuff and the insurance that I knew was gonna go up.
Yep.
The transfer out budget, the 700,000, 713,000, that's all our debt and interest, the bonds we have out right now. So basically, the whole Abington budget would be $3,023,702.
You just said bonds? Is that what you said, or did I just hear that wrong?
Yes.
Bonds and loans and stuff that we have.
Yeah.
All the loans we've taken, in the last 5 years, we've done $3 million worth of water main work in town.
Yeah.
Town of Abington, $3 million in Rockland. Now it's time to pay that stuff back.
Do we make money on this?
That, we'll
Like, are
be
we
getting
positive on the water?
The,
Well, yeah.
this year.
It's user fee based, so.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm
It has
saying.
to be.
Yeah,
yeah, so,
But is it like a good amount? My question is it a good amount as in like, do you make enough money in 10 years to where you can not take out bonds?
that is something we're gonna, I can get into in a little
Yeah,
bit.
sure.
Once we get to the funding, I can explain where I wanna go with it.
Yeah, keep going.
The problem that we've had in the last couple of years is my predecessor actually took money out of reserve to make this budget. Meeting with the DOR in the town of Rockland, they've informed me that our water rates alone are supposed to cover my budget. That hasn't been happening in the last couple of years, so that's something I'm trying to get away from. I know, just looking back at the other paperwork, I think in the last 4 years, we've used $800,000 out of reserve to cover the budget.
And
That's
Joe, is that
why-
in an effort to not raise the water
Correct.
rates? It was to try and keep the water
So
rates?
that's why last year the water rates went up $1 a 100 cubic feet.
Mhm.
This year, the board's already voted to put them up another 25 cents. That's something, if you want to go to that
I don't want to
last.
skip what, you just.
No,
do whatever you
I
wanna
just
do.
finished the Abington
Yeah.
budget, so if you want me
I
to.
just did, again, I was just trying to understand it, but yeah.
No, it was a good question, because I wanted to explain it to the whole board. So if you turn onto that back page, the FY20 rate, my FY20 rate was $4.75. The board voted to go up to $5 a 100 cubic feet, naturally a 25-cent increase. So this is the estimated usage, and that was another problem that we found. It seems like the estimated usage was a lot higher than,
What it
the
was?
numbers were
that
a
you-
lot higher than they should have been, if you look at what we brought in and what we're trying to meet. So then a quarterly fee, if you go down a little bit, right now it's $42 every quarter per household. That's gonna go up $1 per quarter, so $4 a year on that per household. The elderly fee elderly discount that we invoked last year, we gave them a 20% discount on the bill, which we have found out, number one, it's been abused. This whole process with the elderly people that couldn't afford to pay the water, that are on a fixed income. We've had a lot of homeowners come in that have a $300, $400 water bill, and they're saving $100 or whatever on that water bill, and still complaining that, well, if I'm only saving $50, I'm going home and water my lawn a little more. We've had a lot of that. In the town of Rockland alone, we estimate we lost $100,000. Abington, we haven't really figured that out yet, and we're only halfway through the year.
Do you still drive around and check?
Do I?
Not you personally, I didn't mean you personally. I meant, is there some,
is,
like enforcement that drives around and checks for?
We have a water ban that we keep in effect, and the reason we keep that in effect, if we took it off, it would take us probably 2 years to get it back on, because we have to go back through DEP. So what we do is we leave that on all the time. If we don't have to enforce it, we don't enforce it. The last couple of years, knock on wood, we haven't had to enforce it.
That answers the question. There's always a water ban in town.
Always a water ban.
Right?
But we don't enforce it. There's always a handheld odd even type of water ban. Number one, we have to do it to satisfy DEP, that if something happens, we have,
Something
an
in place.
avenue to
Yeah.
conserve. That's why we keep it on. A lot of people, how come we have a water ban, all this development going on? Well, number one, we want to give water to the developments. It's going to bring in money for the town, number one. It makes money for the water department. Right now, we're getting to the point where we're almost at our limit. We've just got a withdrawal permit increase from DEP, and we're trying to get an increase at the plant at Myers Ave. We're doing,
For the amount of water that we draw.
we can only withdraw a certain amount out of the South Coastal Basin, which is every town that's around here combined. So we were 2.2 million, we went up to 2.5 million in 2020. This year, in July, we'll be able to go up to 2.7, and by FY30, I think we can max out at 2.83 million gallons a day, average. Which is good for us, but we still have to mitigate from 2020 to 2030. We have to show savings, like they built a new high school. All that underground drainage, everything goes in, gets filtered back into the ground. We get to claim some of that as drainage, any town property. This year, I might be going after open space. I know we haven't looked at Griffin's Dairy, where that's gonna, I'm assuming, be open space. Everything that we present to DEP has to be approved. Things that, mitigation, anything the sewer department saves from infiltration, we get credit for that. So the more money you give the sewer department for I&I, it helps us out in the long run. Getting back to the breakdown on the budget, so with those rates, it would bring in $3,369,936. We took a 3-year average of our liens. In Abington, we collect our liens. In Rockland, we do not. We don't collect what we bill out in Rockland. You see that we collect more in the last 3 years than we've actually liened, but that's because we're catching up from 16, 17.
You're finally getting those people to pay.
People are paying. The thing with the liens is, once we lien it, we usually don't get it till the next fiscal year, so I gotta kind of, like in the town of Rockland, they actually, on this breakdown, subtracted $150,000 in liens that we don't get. So I can't claim that as,
Income.
money coming in to cover my budget. We are, going back originally when I started until, I think, 2012, we did yearly shut-offs in the spring for people that were delinquent. And we collected most of our money that way. We got away from that, and it's killing us in the town of Rockland. People
Why'd you
want-
get away from it?
Why did we? Because they started the liens, and they thought that would take care of it, but we lien over
Not as effective.
$250,000 a year in Rockland.
You just go back to it?
We're gonna go back to it in June. We've started sending out letters. We can't go back further than what's never been liened. In other words, if you've already been liened something, we can't go after that. So basically, it's what's in the
Going
rear.
forward.
So if you're 6 months behind, right now, we're sending out letters that you're behind, just to kind of get it in people's minds. I know myself, I take my water bill, you get it every 3 months, and you throw it on the counter, and next thing you know, the next one's there, and you haven't paid that first one, So we are going back to that. Hopefully, it brings in all our money. We don't have that problem in Abington. Like you can see, we do bring in the liens. So on the right-hand side, your service interest,
And this is in a good time, right? So, I mean, I know you weren't here, but like in a bad time, is it like really bad to collect this stuff? Or does it not really make a difference?
I don't think it really makes a difference. I mean, you look at your water bill, the average water bill is about $150 per house or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that's every 3 months. Oh, yeah. Do you water your lawn?
Not in the winter.
No.
I think she says no.
Really? $500? You should have someone come out and look.
They're very hydrated.
Yeah.
We drink a lot of water.
That's it.
So, you know, you look at that, so it's every 3 months. So the average house is $150 to $150.
Unless you live in a cave.
Yeah.
Unless you leave
You
the
know, you
shower
look at that,
running
you compare that
24/7.
to your cable bill, your phone bill. You know, your cable
Yeah.
bill's $200 a month, your phone bill, you know, your cell phone bill's $100, you know, basically your water bill's $50 a month.
Yep.
Or $75 a month. And, even with this increase, you're paying under, you know, there's 748 gallons in 100 cubic feet. So you're getting that for $5, you're getting 748 gallons of water. You know, so it's still pretty reasonable. I know we try to keep it as low as we can, but just like everything else, electricity costs and everything else.
So just to wrap that together, it's essentially the rate increases $1 each quarter
Yep, $1 each
And-
quarter, and then 25
and 25 cents for
100
every
cubic feet.
748 gallons of water.
Correct.
So,
Still a bargain.
So the elderly fee, as we discussed earlier, they've gone away from the 20% elderly fee. And what they're gonna do is give a flat fee of $10 a quarter. So we average $40 a year, so that's actually taken away $45,000 of that income, which we subtracted up the top.
Are you open to suggestions on that, or is it just something that's already done?
They voted on that
Okay.
in February, the commissioners,
Yep.
after I presented to them that the money we were actually losing on that.
I just think like an abatement would work better, right? So the person who wants the discount comes in and files an abatement to get that $10 or whatever it is back.
That's,
You'd probably even have a lot of people saying, "Oh, whatever, I don't want to
They
go
do.
there and do that."
they do have to sign up for it.
All right, good.
They come in, they fill out an application, we make sure it's a single-family home only.
Yep.
Anything else is not eligible. If they have a two-family,
Yep.
three-family, they're collecting rents. They do come in, fill out an application. When we first announced it in July, it was bedlam down there, July 2nd. And I think they're actually, I'm not positive, but I think they started at 62 years old. I think they're going either up to 65, or maybe it was 68. So we have to reevaluate and then we'll go from there.
There should definitely be a break though, you know,
Yeah.
people aren't fixed incomes and,
But we have to do it where we can afford
Right,
it too, and where, you know, it's not gonna get abused,
right.
you know? I mean, that's,
It is too bad that some will take advantage of it and
yeah.
ruin it for,
I mean, we have a lot of, you know, leisure with everybody's over, you know, 65 years old.
Yeah.
And leisure with over the trail, 400 trailers. A lot of that. And a lot of people need it, and there's the people that, you know, they don't use as much water, so $10 to them is
So,
basically
yeah.
the whole water bill after
Yeah.
the minimum charge, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So the service interest in joint, along with the conservation fees and new developers that come in. If you're gonna build a house, it's $605 a bedroom for a conservation fee, and we just put that basically into infrastructure improvements at the end. And the systems development is a single-family home, if you want to tap the water main, it's $3,500. Any big developments, like, if you're gonna tap and bring in a water main, if you're gonna bring in an 8-inch water main, it's an $80,000 fee. And when you build the houses, it's still, you have a fee on top of that.
For each additional
yep,
house, that's
for
correct.
each bedroom, for each house.
So it's $3,500 for a 1-inch tap. You know, it goes up 2-inch tap, 3-inch tap, whatever size water main you have coming in. And the conservation, $605. That all goes in basically into our reserve. So with the service, interest, and joint, you see the averages that we bring in. What I'm looking to is build that reserve back up. We have a lot of big projects still coming up. right now, the number one project coming up is the 2 water tanks on Rice Ave in Rockland, which is gonna be approximately a $6 million project, which would be split between the 2 towns. Last year, we had the money for the design. 2 years ago, we had the money for a feasibility study, whether to replace them, refurbish them, you know, tear them down, put 1 million gallon tank, there's 2 500,000 gallon tanks there now. We had that feasibility study, that just came in. We have, last year we took articles out both towns of Rockland and Abington for the design. We just have to make a decision on what we're gonna do, which we haven't done yet. Whether, we're definitely gonna go new because it was $4 million to refurbish, and the cheapest new starts at 5, it goes up to 6. You know what I mean? So the new is gonna give you
A warranty, right? You get some
Much
type
more,
of.
much
Yeah,
longer
um,
life.
You know what I mean? And the refurbish might give you 20 if you're lucky. You know? So that'll probably end up being a bonded issue anyways. We'll be bonding that out. We'll never get that out of reserve.
How much is in the reserve?
Right now, we started the year with 351,000,
How much do you think was taken out in the last couple of years that you were just talking about?
800,000.
Why'd they do that?
Because we had.
No, I'm saying, like, what, is that, that's
The
something
intent, the
a lot of
someone
intent of,
can do, or
the
do-
intent of doing it, and we talked about this with Dan in previous year, the intent of
It's not
doing
to
it
raise
was
rates.
so that they didn't have to raise rates.
Yeah, but I mean, that,
So,
Because we were also in the position of having to
Yeah.
pay back the retirement, we'd had a recession,
Exactly.
we were trying to,
yeah.
A lot of that
That's-
came back to that Plymouth County retirement that we owed too, I believe.
because to raise the rates at that time when we were paying back money that had for years been being paid by the wrong town, the rates would have gone, it would have been a very large jump.
We actually had a rate study done in FY14, and it was a 5-year rate study out. In 19, the rate was supposed to be $7.49 per 100 cubic feet. That would have included a certain amount each year for infrastructure, which I think was $500,000.
that's my question. I mean, it looks like we're running this pretty lean and not really, I mean, maybe it's normal to do that and have to do the bond, but
You'd never, I mean, in order, I mean, that's a $3 million,
yeah.
you know, for each
Swing,
town.
yeah.
I mean, you're not gonna build that up in your reserve very quickly, you know, and then get rid of it. That's just one project.
Yep.
You know, like I said, we have 3 treatment plants right now. In order to try to get more out of Myers Ave, we're permitted for 0.46 million gallons a year. I mean, a day out of that. We're only pulling 0.25 out of it. 8 years ago, we put in a new well number 4. We've never had the money to get, we put the well in, we have plenty of water. Now we gotta pipe it to the treatment plant. We've done pump tests on the well, there's plenty of water. Unfortunately, the quality of the water is not what we wanted it to be. So now we're in the process of designing how we can change our whole treatment plant to accept all 4 wells at once, which is gonna be another cost coming down. We're in front of DEP right now, we're waiting to hear, hopefully by the end of the month. We are setting up a pilot program with them to change our filter system down there. And if they'll let us run the pilot program for a year, if that works, we'll be back into either petition the town articles, if I have it in the reserve. Probably gonna cost, a rough guess would be 2 to 2.5 million to restructure that treatment plant. You know, little things like, we could build up the reserve and do 1 street at a time, water mains, stuff like that. It's good just to hit a big section at once, because you do 1 street at a time, you're feeding the brand new pipe with old pipes, and the water never, you know, like we just did, Summit, Wyman, Temple, that whole area up in there, you know, made a mess.
We address, every year we ask you this, because people always have an issue with older sections of the infrastructure. Those areas of town get water that is
just,
hard
yeah.
brown.
Not pretty to look at,
Yeah.
and it's orange or,
That's why we just did Ekstrom Thicket, that end of town, that basically the Weymouth section there, because they're basically a dead end of town, older pipes. The same is why we jumped to Oak Street. We did that, we incorporated that in the project. That was actually an add-in at the end. We had some extra money, so we ended up doing all of Oak Street, which was a big problem. Just to put into perspective, our transmission main that comes from Sandy Bottom and Pembroke, it's about 5 miles. It goes through Pembroke, Hanson, over Beach Hill and Rockland to feed Rockland and Abington. That transmission main was put in 1886, and it's still the same main.
Is that the wooden one?
There is a piece of wood in there. We've removed it. It's in the office if you want to go look at it, the way the old wooden water mains used to be. It's a 16-inch cast iron water main that it really needs to be looked at. But I mean, that,
And that's 5 miles long?
5 miles long. I mean, estimated price is between $75 and $100 million to replace that.
In Rockland would pay for most of that? Rockland would share that?
That
or-
would be a 50/50.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. The state is doing part of Route 14 over, which is McQuon Street. It's, I don't know if you're familiar with St. Joseph, the work at church is. If you go by the Shaws and up the top of the hill
yeah,
in Pembroke, in Hanson.
Hanson.
That's McQuon Street leads to our plant. That's actually Route 14. The state's doing that over. The engineer that's working for the state, Environmental Partners, does a lot of work for us. They've incorporated us in that. We're trying to see if the state will give us any money even to do a section of it. We worked with them on Route 18. They replaced from the Dunkin' Donuts up to Oak Street, the old 6-inch main. They replaced it. It was $275,000. They did it for nothing. So, that saved the town. Hopefully, I don't think they'll jump on this, but even if, they'll give us some, and
We'll
we can
take
match
anything.
them, if we can get, this is probably 1.5 miles,
Little at a
a
time.
little at a time.
Where
It's
where
not a
is the
major,
oldest?
Major problem, but, when that pipe goes, then basically we're trying to serve the whole, we get most of our water, we average about over 2 million gallons a day out of Pembroke.
In Abington, where are the oldest water pipes, like feeding
Older
houses? What
sections.
section of town would you think is,
You name it.
really?
Like 58, Route 58's old, the main roads. Route 18 from from Whitman Line to 139 is old. We have 2 mains on that. But the bigger main, the newer main, nobody's serviced off of that. It's just basically to move water from treatment plants to tanks and stuff.
But we've done some
139
updating in like the neighborhoods and stuff on the underground
Mhm.
that goes that feeds the houses, right?
Yep.
So it's just a lot of the,
The main, it
Main
depends
roads.
what section of town it's on, too. Naturally, like off of Hancock Street, all the developments,
those are newer, so.
those are newer, PVC pipe that should last. And, anything from the 80s up. I mean, we still have a lot of,
So probably like the Green Street area and then within.
Green Street, I actually put all that water main in before I started working for the water department, so that was put in probably 1982 or 3. So that whole Green Street development. Parts of Brockton Ave, a lot of it's piecemeal, the older stuff,
Mhm.
but I think with the last project we tackled, I think we handled a lot of the real older stuff. Some of it was asbestos pipe, which they're making you get rid of now.
Mhm.
It's naturally, it's asbestos on the outside,
Outside.
lined with concrete on the inside. I think the only street in Abington we got left with that is National Memorial Drive. That's something if we could do in reserve where it's so short,
Yeah.
it's probably 1,000 feet of pipe,
But to come back to the question, also, the discoloration is because of that 5 miles of cast iron pipe.
No, that pipe's actually pretty good. When you get in the discoloration, when it's going from the 16-inch main down to an 8-inch main, and a lot of the house services, like say Monroe Street in that area, Charles Street, they're older 6-inch pipes. And once they get the tuberculation inside them, the pressure of the water, we go out and flush. We try to flush all that out, but, you never get it.
I just had mine flushed out of my house, and the plumber said that a lot of the developments, they did the smallest pipe required by code.
Correct.
So like, we should have had like a 9, and I'm just thinking of numbers, we should have had like a 9-inch or 9-foot, whatever the pipes are. And the builders put in 6, because that was code, and that was a cheaper way for them to do it, so then it builds up, and then it smells, and you have the color. So we had ours flushed. We weren't having a problem. We had a problem because I broke my garbage disposal. But but he came in and flushed all of them, and our bathroom sinks were smelling, but it was because our pipes were small, and it's because the builders are building these developments and they're meeting code, but the pipes are too small for the size houses. You're building a 3,000 square foot house with a 6-foot pipe that's not big enough, and then after 20 years, all the buildup and shit that you're putting down your drains is clogging the pipes. So it's not necessarily the town. It's your feed from the town line to your house, because it's not big enough to accommodate. That's your water lesson for today. And it costs $150 to have them blown out.
We are, like I said, I'm aggressively looking. I was on the streets. I know what's there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know what section of towns we really should attack, but, it all comes down to the bottom line of money.
Yep.
We got to prioritize what we're going to spend the money on. Like I said, we just spent $3 million on water mains Abington, $3 million in Rockland. Now you got to turn your attention a little bit to the treatment side of it. These plants are getting older. We try to keep the maintenance up, doing the filters over, and everything like that. So, you look back and the plant opened in 1974. You go, oh, that's a newer plant. 1974 was a long time ago. You get old quick.
Does that water recirculate back in, or does it?
What's
The
that?
treatment plant, where does the water go after that?
Once
Just
it's
quickly.
treated, once it's pumped, in Hingham Street in Rockland, we have a $1 million gallon clear well. We treat the water, basically, it's a big underground storage tank. Treated water goes into there, so as we need it, pumping it out, we maintain our levels in the water tanks, which keeps the pressure in the town. So, once the tanks are full, we can cut the pumps down. Nothing ever comes back to the treatment plants. Everything's all pressurized out there. We're using the water 24/7. Naturally, we're not using it at night, so instead of running 3 pumps, we can run a small 6-inch pump. But, high demand, you're running, 3 full-speed pumps out of the treatment plants.
Sure.
And then, the pumps, we had an issue this year with one of the pumps going down. We have 3 finished water pumps, two big ones, so we can alternate them back and forth, and in case one goes down. We had one go down, and it took 3 months to get a new one. So crossing your fingers for 3 months if the second one doesn't go down. So that's something to look at. In a few years, replace one, so now you have, and then a couple more years, replace the other.
But the water is safe.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when people say, now my water rate's going to go up, and I am being delivered unsafe water into my
The
home.
water's tested twice a week, and everything goes through DEP.
And so the letters that they get that say,
Yeah.
that's,
A lot of that, the letters that went out the last couple of years, THMs, which is, the chlorine builds up too much. A lot of that was on a dead end on Longwater Drive in Rockland, because there's a 10-inch main that used to feed that whole industrial park where Weirgard used to
okay,
be.
yeah.
Well, Hingham,
Norwell?
Norwell took over. They never had a water main in the park, so we served the whole park, even though it was in Norwell. Norwell decided to come in, run their own main, bring it to the Rockland, Norwell line. So now they serve all the industrial park, and we serve 2 buildings on that line. We've got a big 10-inch main going down there. So now, what we do is we go out once a week and flush the hydrant at the end of it to keep the water moving. We waste over 1 million gallons of water a year doing that. There's no other, that's just.
That
to
keeps
keep-
those
we
levels
actually have
down.
to sample for that THM at that end. And, right now, that keeps everything you know, to code, you know. So we have to do it 4 times a year, meet a yearly average. You can't be over it at all, but they can combine it all to make you go over it.
Okay,
That would have been fun.
all right.
But, yes, the water does not leave the treatment plant unless it's, and then we sample, I think there's 38 spots we sample every week for representative of our whole system, you know, dead ends everywhere. So, and they all have to be, it's a weekly thing they do. So, everything's sent to DEP and they review everything.
Rick?
Just for other people's knowledge, especially if they don't want people, the Abington Rockland Joint Waterworks is not part of the town of Abington. It's a separate legal entity, may as well be the town of Avon for that matter. A lot of people come to our office looking, they may be upset, so we send them to jail, but I think it goes back to like early part of the 20th century. It's a very, very old.
1886.
1886,
There you go.
When the town got together, I was with the purchase, Great Sandy, Big Sandy, whatever it is, one, because I knew they were needed or something.
You knew that, Joe?
Smartest
No,
move
I
ever made.
heard about the Joe's Plaza.
Yeah, I mean, Abington and Rockland are the mechanism that funds it, but effectively, you know, the town people, other than the 3 elected representatives to the commission, really don't have any say in the operation. But to the extent that, you know, the funding mechanism does have to go through, you know, the town's budget, technically, that's obviously why you're here. But I think a lot of people don't understand that it's actually not a department within the town of Abington.
There is one little complication, which Joe alluded to earlier. Is the state, when it approves the tax rates for Abington and Rockland, they want to say to take a look at it on the water and sewer. On every department, to make sure if you've got revenues coming in to cover expenses, they want to make sure that the justification for those revenues is valid. In other words, if you put down, I'm going to raise $2 million, I raised $1 million last year, I'm going to raise $2 million this year, you have to show where it's coming from.
Makes sense.
I just want to differentiate this from like the sewer department. It's a whole different thing.
Other questions for Joe?
I guess I was kind of surprised at the number of cost categories that have no change at all. But then I was looking at like the 2019 and comparing it to 2020. So I'm assuming that they were probably similar budgeted numbers and with varying spend. So do you have the flexibility to move money from, you know, line 4 to line 5?
I actually do. Basically, my joint budget gets paid, the town of Rockland pays that out. And then we do is figure out the percentage, and we bill Abington at monthly for whatever expense to cover the joint. It's under like 2 line items for the town of Rockland. I think wages and salaries is one of them. So if I did go over on my system maintenance and I was way under on the consulting,
Okay.
it would cover it,
All right, that makes sense. Okay.
which works out good for me.
Yeah.
Because usually, sometimes we might be over on payroll or something if we hire a new employee or, you know, something like that, kind of in midstream.
Yeah, so I've seen some big gaps between, again, I don't have the 2019 budget, but I'm assuming it's fairly similar to the 2020. So,
Yeah.
you know, some of them are like $150,000 off, some are like 20,000 over, and that would kind of explain why you don't project any kind of increase, because you can move that money around as
Move it
needed.
around, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will you have any warrant articles
I
this
do.
year?
While you're reading that out, just one thing you
Yep.
touched on before. So we charge $5 a
100 cubic feet.
Yeah, and somebody did a study and did something or whatever that said we should be charging something.
We did a rate study, we had an engineering firm do a rate study for the town.
Yeah,
So they did, basically saying this is projecting out, you know, what you're gonna have for income coming in, what
Yeah.
you should be charging, you know.
so why don't we do what somebody's telling us to do?
That was before my tenure.
$7.
Um, But, I mean,
Maybe you would stop using so much for the record.
they wanted to keep, basically, to keep the rates down.
Yeah.
Keep the,
Is everybody else like around
keep
this
the
time?
cost low for the
We're actually,
taxpayers.
for the way we operate with, like I said, 3 treatment plants. A lot of towns, say like Whitman or somebody like they buy their water from Brockton or,
Yeah.
so all they're doing is charging the people for the water. They're not really doing any treatment. You know, we have 9 treatment staff that, you know, that are all licensed and treat our water, run the plants, you know. So basically, we put out a lot more money to operate ours, and we're still in the range of everybody else for rate-wise. The articles, basically this year, these articles, a lot of them are articles that are basically yearly. First one's a third payment on the 5-year lease on the backhoe. This is a lease to own, so after the next 2 payments, we'll own it. We did that on our last backhoe, and we got, I think, almost 20 years on it. The second one was $50,000 for our
Water
meter
meters.
replacement program.
How far are you into that, Joe? You know, you've been doing that for a while.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be a never-ending system.
You're just gonna
because
start
it's
there
so
from the
many-
beginning?
Cycling.
I mean, $50,000 covers about 250 meters, the setups, because they're all remote. You have the meter that you have to buy, then the box that sends the signal where the guys can drive by. It's not a, we love to do 500 meters a year, which we try to do, because I do have some money in the budget, the Abington budget itself for these. The extra 50,000 is just getting us ahead, trying to do it. You're supposed to replace your meter every 10 to 12 years. Unfortunately, we're on like a 15-year thing right now, because we can only do so many a year.
Yeah.
I don't want to put it out to the public, but they actually slow down. That's why we try to replace them, so we can get all our revenue. $40,000 would be the match with the town of Rockland. The town of Rockland's replacing all their servers, which we go through, and our server at the water department is directly linked to all their replacements, so it's gonna be about $80,000 to replace it. So that 40,000 will be matched with Rockland to replace those.
I think we missed,
The plant
Filter
filter
upgrades.
upgrades.
Filter
Plant filter
upgrades.
upgrades, 50,000.
Yeah, that's what's gonna be coming down the line, I believe. And I was just talking about the treatment plant at Myers. DEP's come down with some new regulations on the water that a lot of towns are not gonna be able to meet. They're gonna have to change their filtering system. So we're just trying to get ahead of it right now. And so I'll have that money in place out of the reserve in case I need it, which I strongly feel I'm gonna. $10,000 for continuing our annual leak detection. We have a company that comes in. They go around the whole town. They average anywhere between 10 and 15 fines a year that leaks that don't surface, that we're losing water on. You might have a pinhole in someone's service line, or, you know, we've actually found a water main break on Shaw Ave that was leaking into the drain line and going right into the river. You just never know. Some of them don't service. It's worth it. We have to account for any unaccounted for water every year. We're supposed to be under 10%. The last couple of years, we've been over that, like 11 to 15% of unaccounted.
Do you think that's from leaks or from like
A lot
people
of it's
filling
undercover
pools and not?
leaks, people taking meters out, leaks, you know, it's just unaccounted for.
I think in general, a person filling a pool, it would still go through their meter, so it would be accounted
Well,
for.
unless they took the meter out, which
Right.
that happens. But I mean, that's minimal.
If they did
I mean,
it standardly,
Yeah, I
just
mean,
through a hose.
that
from
Shaw
the house.
Ave leak, we estimated we lost over 2 million gallons of water.
Wow.
We estimated how long it ran, but,
Yeah.
you know, you never know for sure.
If how long it had.
And the last one, the $25,000 for survey testing, which is something we have to do by law every year. test all our backflow devices. We sub that out. We put it out to bid every year. A company comes in. I think there's over 600 devices in the town of Abington that they survey. Just so, in case there was a water main break, we shut the water off. It might create a vacuum if there's anything dangerous that pulls back out of a big factory or something. These are backflow valves that will just shut. So we have to inspect them to make sure they're gonna shut in
Okay.
case something happens. Funeral homes, when they're embalming the bodies or whatever. Any industrial thing, any sprinkler system, any building with a sprinkler system. That water sits in the pipe, gets stagnant, that can't get back out into our system if something happens.
Why aren't those last two part of the annual budget if they're annual expenses?
Basically, to keep the rates down.
Okay. Okay.
If I have it in reserve, we've always tried to take it out of the reserve, basically, so, you put that into the budget, that budget number's gonna go up.
Okay.
How does it keep the rate down? Because if we.
Because if the budget is up,
If
gets
I added
split.
$75,000 to my budget, that $5 a 100 cubic foot would match. I'd have to match that water rate to my budget for DOI. So in other words, that $5 would probably go up to $5.05. So I feel if I have it in the reserve,
Yep.
minimum amount to take out every year to get these, it's keeping that budget number down.
But then we put money into the reserve. So we are paying for it.
Oh, we're paying.
That's what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
But what goes into the reserve is
But that-
inconsistent
Yeah,
each
but that
year.
could come out of systems development, that could come out of, people building the houses, the fees that we charge for that, the fees we charge for final readings,
You gotta look at it like, it's free cash
Yeah.
for them, and if they don't have that free cash, then they can't do these capital items.
Okay.
If you put it in your budget, then your rates are gonna increase, and, it's gonna be there all the time. So there's a potential, like he said, he's supposed to be doing it every 10 years, but they're out to 15 right now for water mains, so they might have to skip a year to do something because they didn't get it in their reserves.
Sure.
So it's a safer way of looking at getting those items done without raising the rates to the taxpayer.
I think something like the survey testing where it's a legal mandate, that might be something
Well,
that
I was just gonna
could
say
go
there
into
are
the budget.
legitimate-
Whereas the meters would be a different thing where we can kind of slow down or speed up depending on what we have in the reserve in a given year and what we're able to do.
And then the reserve is fed by an overage in what you expect to
reserves,
collect.
anything we bring in over water rates, service charges, systems development, which is, construction, building. That's where most of our reserve actually comes from. And I think the
All those
Randolph
fees,
Street
the
project there is
tie-in
about a
fees and all of that.
almost 200,000.
It's good. Good for the town.
Without going into great detail, I'm just curious how it's so many miles of pipe, how do you detect a leak?
Usually they surface because we're under pressure, especially when I
see.
was talking
Some
about
kind of
coming
pops out of
from.
the ground, or?
We have 126 miles of pipe altogether
Yeah, yeah.
between the two towns. 99% of it will shoot up through the ground.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
I mean, they're under pressure.
Yeah, it makes sense, I guess, I wasn't thinking about that.
So that's why, and like I said, that's why we do the annual leak detection also for undetectable leaks, just to say,
How do you detect an undetectable leak?
They have like the sonar equipment they use. He can walk from hydrant to hydrant, put it on. A lot of it, they might do at night or when it's not busy, when people ain't using a lot of water. And then they can narrow it down and
People other than
end up
Kate.
going to a service box, a shut-off
Yeah.
valve or anything, put a wrench on, listen, it gets louder and louder.
Mm.
If we have a leak, sometimes it does service, we dig down, we can't find it. We call the company in and they can pinpoint, instead of digging 5 holes.
Wow.
You guys should head over here.
That's pretty
We
amazing.
had
so
the
many miles
problem
of
on
pipe.
Route 18,
Yeah.
Route 18 at Bank Street this year,
Mm-hmm.
We dug down, we couldn't locate the leak, and it ended up being about 15 feet away.
Interesting.
Other questions for Joe? Joe, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Great first,
Yeah, good
time
job.
at it, too. You did a great job.
You've survived the first,
Yeah.
first time through.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we have a couple of members of our planning board. I see Wayne Smith and Rick Collins. And we have our town manager coming up too.
What page is this, Mike?
26.
And if you don't mind, if I could just start with the expenses, so the bulk of the conversation is going to be on the salaries.
Yes, I would imagine so.
This is quite minimal, as you can see. The first expense line item is advertising. That's for advertising.
Sorry, we
zoning.
said page 46.
26.
And I don't know how much you want to talk about, $200 extra, but that's for advertising, zoning and subdivision.
So that went up 300 last year and is going up another 200.
I'm sorry, what?
No.
That one, it appears that that went up 300 last year and is going up another 200 this year.
Speaks to the development.
There is, like, every year she's looking for more money for advertisement, and there is building going up there and
Yeah.
things that need to be done that needs to be advertised, so. Little money.
And once again, yeah. You know, as you can see, these items are so small that you don't really have, you know, although you can interchange these expense items when they're so small, you don't have really anywhere to go. You have, another subdivision. You can see the notations here, the technical budget, and as it says, for board and staff workshops, $300 is really almost negligible. I think there's workshops out there, the citizen planner workshops, the Old Colony Planning Council and the state, so this really is almost minimal. I don't know how many members of the planning board have taken advantage of these, but this would barely cover probably one person going to a session, so it's very minimal.
Much lower than what we normally see in
And
other departments.
I think
with
the
a line.
citizens, they're $75 a pop or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And the postage budget, I think, speaks for itself. Again.
What is the planning board mailing?
I'm sorry?
Out of curiosity, what is the planning board mailing?
Every plans, each one of the members,
Okay.
every meeting, for every meeting, maybe sometimes twice. All the plans have to go out in advance.
Okay.
And for supplies, paper, folders, pens, I don't think too much more time to spend on that. And I don't know, salaries, and I'll go to the administrative assistant first. That's 19 hours a week. We did move that from 15 to 19 this year, simply because of just too much workload. It was just getting untenable. So that's the 19-hour position that currently exists. Obviously, the big question has to do with our ability to fund a planner, an economic development director. I will say that right now, our goal is to keep that in the proposed operating budget. The actual amount, well, obviously, that's to be determined. We are really in the final stages of completing a waging classification plan, which includes, even though we don't have a planner, we included that classification in there. So we'll have a pretty good idea as to what an appropriate salary would be. But you are probably talking closer to the $85,000 north, probably between $80,000 and $90,000 is what I'm just supposing what the final product's going to be. Yes, Barb?
So where this is a new position, is money that we previously had for an assistant town manager position, is that how we would have this money for a new position?
Well, it hasn't been, I mean, it's not like it's specifically targeted.
No.
But as you'll see next week, the goal is not to add, that type of administrative support back into the budget.
So not to add back into the town manager office budget.
So, I'm sorry?
Not to add back
Correct.
into the town manager
Correct.
office
So you- and
what
you
has
can,
been removed,
philosophically
taking out
get
the
any way
assistant
you
town
want,
manager
but
position.
That's a legitimate way of looking at it. I guess when it comes to the merits, although I.
So
would speak
that was
to-
going to be the question is
right.
what,
So I will,
what is,
even though
what
I
is
have,
the,
my
what
own
is the
strong thoughts on it, I would pass.
purpose of the town taking on this position and having someone in it, and what is the benefit?
Well, certainly, one of the problems we have is we need to bring more industry in the town of Abington. And the more housing we put in here, just one other issue, and we've been doing that, and obviously, at one point, we were up to 10%, just about 10% for affordable housing. As we build more houses and more apartments and condominiums and so forth, even though we've reached that point, it goes back the other way, and then the next thing it is, someone comes in with a 40B because for some reason or other, they don't think they can get it passed through the planning board, they'll go with a 40B because for affordable housing, and they can force that development on the town of Abington. And we've got a number of projects in town that have had that, and the most recent one's up on Plymouth Street behind the senior center. And certainly affordable housing is important, but you need to get revenue off it also. And rather than have housing, it'd be nice to have industry. And if we had that person, that could be a good salesperson, which I'm not quite sure you always consider a town planner as a salesperson, but to bring more industry in and see what we can do to change development. Obviously, we have 123, we have 139, we have 18, we have 58. And in some cases, you see things encroaching on residential areas, and that can be a problem. We have a new, on the corner of Shore Avenue in 18, a new facility that will take a storage facility, which will add income to the town without sending children to school and so forth. And that's basically what we're looking for, is someone that can actually help the planning board do that. There's no one really now in the town that would, someone comes into town and says, I want to do something, there's no one that can actually talk with them and tell them what the values are, and also to get grants. We've had a town planner in the past. We've had two over the period of years. One was a fellow that was the head of the Old Colony Planning Council and did a great job for us. It was at the same time they were doing the Weymouth Naval Air Station. Also, he did our master plan, which saved the town considerable money. In fact, the last town master plan was projected at costing the town $150,000. And we suggested that we try to do something alternatively, and we've ended up coming up with a plan for about $30,000 for the town of Abington, and it's been quite a saving. We've also done our zoning rules and regulations. That was a figure that you had before you about a year or so ago, so something like $85,000, and we've had that done for less than $20,000. So we really try to do these things, but it'd be nice to have a town planner that could be on top of it and really follow it through. You know, Rick has a lot of actual facts and figures that perhaps you want to talk about, Rick.
Yeah, just, I don't want to belabor the point entirely, but just if I could pass a couple things out. I know you're, so I know that at first glance it might seem like, is this a nice to have versus a must have type of position, especially when we're talking about the need to hire firefighters, police officers, and teachers. And what my argument would be is that it's getting to the point where if we don't have this, the town's going to start to lose out on money. It's going to start to cost the town more not to have this position. If I can have you just turn quickly to page 3, it has titled Residential Property Taxes Driving Levy Growth. This is just, I'm sorry. I apologize.
He passed the one that you handed in.
Just being a gentleman.
What we're seeing is residential tax values have grown 29% over the past 5 years. These figures are from the State Division of Local Services. We all know that our home values are growing. What's not growing are commercial and industrial values. They're only growing about 2.4% over the past 5 years at the same time. So what that means is that when you then figure out the tax levy, as you can see in the next box, the residential homeowner piece of the tax levy has grown 22%, and the commercial industrial piece has shrunk 3%. That means homeowners are picking up 104% of the growth of our tax levy because they have to make up for the amount that the commercial has shrunk. So that's why when people are opening their tax bills, they're getting that sticker shock. It's not just our budgeting, because our budgeting is great. It's the fact that it's being shifted onto them. And it's going to continue to shift as we continue to lose more commercial tax dollars. And one of the things we have to do to reverse that trend is to increase the value of commercial land in Abington. It's not just create more commercial land, it's increase the value that's already there. So if you can go to the,
How has that not happened organically?
if you drive a bunch of factors, but basically when you drive north of 139, what do you see?
I am like the worst navigational.
Potholes.
You see potholes, but you also see empty lots, you see trash trucks, you see school buses, you see storage lots, you see mulch piles.
Yep.
You go down 123, you see auto car lots.
Abandoned.
That's low-value commercial land.
Yep.
We have, just a quick story, someone I know who is a marijuana attorney, works for the marijuana companies. I had asked him about coming to Abington half-jokingly. He said, well, they had reached out, but they were told by somebody there was no space in Abington because they have no person to reach out to. And technically, all the property is active, but it's suboptimal use. I don't think trash trucks and school buses, and this is not a knock against the property owners, that is not maximizing the value of this commercial land in town.
Yep.
And unfortunately, we just don't have the person as five-person volunteer board when we're all sitting on multiple
Yeah.
boards. Wayne's trying to run a business. We can't go out there and start trying to knock on doors and trying to get business into these spots. So I think that's the main reason, is just, if you go to another town, same residential home rates, same income, maybe their commercial is doing better, and because of that, it's worth more, then that starts to value and factor into the values.
We just touch upon the people ask about splitting the tax rate, but they don't recommend that you, so that the percentage is more on a higher percentage for commercial, but that, for the kind of commercial property that we have in town, you do that to Bemis Drug and to Target. So what is I can't remember do you know the percent that they recommend you be commercial before you?
If you're unless you're at, at least 80%, it's of no value. And generally, even that's just, the shift to commercial, even at that, is so severe versus what little impact you get on a residential base. So, in my experience, you don't really see a levy shift until you get to around 75%.
I think Mr. Shea may have some information regarding that.
Wouldn't be-
I
be
served
shocked if he did.
6 years on the Board of Assessors, I've been working in assessors office for 9 years. I've actually voted on whether or not there was a split rate or not 20 times in my career, between 1 year and the other. You don't have, if you look at our commercial, we have a lot of small businesses, numbers there. And then not only you increase their tax rates, they're not operating on a very big revenue source of stock.
Margins.
Expensive. And if they hire people who work in the town, especially some of the younger people, they sponsor our sports teams, they give to our charities. One other thing that was brought up several years ago when this was happening, when this question came up, is one of the assessors at the time, Paul said one thing, he talked all the time, he talked all the time. You go to split rate. The bigger businesses, I'll pick on that, but the Targets, the Walmarts, they'll hire a lawyer, a good lawyer to fight every bit of the time. Small business can't do it. We've been at 25. I remember in 1980 when I got on the Board of Assessors, we were 15% commercial industry. We're about to say, I think we're now on surge. It hasn't got, it's just not that much out there. You have to raise their rates by close to 150% to see an increase with rate. Really, because what's that going to do to some other business?
Yeah, I wanted to ask that question because people ask that very
People do ask
often.
it.
Why don't we split the tax rate? And that's why.
I've been a proponent in the past, and when you actually see the numbers, we wouldn't feel anything as taxpayers unless you literally doubled the tax bill for businesses. and I think that's just done.
Would this person be like trying to figure out if we could, those areas could be opportunity zones?
Yeah, so if you go to the next page, I lay out some of like what basically the challenges are and some of the possibilities. So this is a quick list. So growing commercial tax base, we have Union Point, they have to work with the new developer to figure out how that's gonna affect us. What's Route 18 gonna look like post-construction? How are we gonna make sure that it's looking nice and not just what it looked like beforehand? We have to figure out how we're gonna dispose of the fire stations and school sites. We have to figure out how we're gonna manage and oversight the new retail marijuana industry. We're gonna have 2 in the town, hopefully, likely. We have new set of federal, state, stormwater prevention regulations coming down. I think this is gonna be the single biggest bylaw in the town's books. It's huge. And we need somehow to figure out how it's gonna apply to everywhere in town. Every business, every homeowner, every development, it's gonna impact just about. It's huge. How are we gonna make North Abington and Abington centers look nice? Because right now they're not looking great. How are we gonna mitigate all the traffic that we're feeling because of regional growth? Not just the growth in Abington, but the fact that Whitman's growing, and East Bridgewater's growing, and Holbrook's growing, Weymouth's growing. It all comes through here at some point. How are we gonna fix some of the traffic intersections that we have? How are we gonna fix Summer Street, which is having 500 new housing units on it?
Wait, what?
Yeah, so you have the new 40B behind
In
the scenes.
Abington?
Yeah. The
You
new
mean houses or housing units?
housing units.
What does that mean?
Apartments, condos.
Why would we do that?
'Cause you have to.
Why do you have to?
The 40B was approved behind it.
Yeah.
We're gonna be voting soon, potentially on one next to the train station. You have the Woodlands, you have the apartment right there, you have, so it's not 500, it might be 350.
Yeah, I was gonna say about 380.
380, 380.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question? Full respect of the zoning planning board, and I've got a lot of calls to support you in your position, so I trust that the town's supporting you, that you should have your position. Does this mean that if this position would help to slow the overpopulation growth in town, and that it would clean up, like you said, North Abington, so we see less tattoo parlors, less used car lots, less of the stuff that's kind of bringing down Old Abington, so we're not becoming a suburb of some of our neighboring cities?
If the town wants to choose the density rules, change density rules to restrict where tattoo parlors can go, to restrict other sort of development, they can vote that at any time, at a town meeting.
So it
But-
just seems like.
So
It
I
helps
think
with-
I think to Katie's question, what you were saying, talking about this, is this would provide us with a person who would be looking at the whole picture and trying to go in the direction that we as a town choose to go.
How we want it to look. how the
Whichever,
town's viewing
whichever
it.
direction that is that we
No.
choose as a
Derives from the
town.
master plan.
Correct.
And the problem becomes is when you have a master plan and you don't have somebody who's
To
able to
implement this.
facilitate it constantly, and 5-member
Volunteer board.
you really can't do that. And it is its own expertise, there's no question about it. I would just caution that, you know, I'm a proponent, I've had the pleasure of working with planners for many, many years, and they're weird, they think differently. So it's a whole different discipline and mindset, but, you know, you can't expect miracles. This is generational stuff. This
Correct.
doesn't just happen overnight.
We won't be looking,
I think that's the
if we
problem.
add the position, we won't
Yeah.
be back here talking about this next year with,
It's a quality of life issue.
Massive
When you cross
changes.
the Brockton line, you know, what does Abington mean to you? You know, is it used car lots, or eventually, hopefully that's not the case, but again, it's a generational thing, and, you know, people talk about, well, grants and make money, but I wouldn't, that's not why you hire a planner to fund itself. That's not the point. And if the case comes where people say, well, he or she didn't write a grant for $100,000, well, we don't need the position, I think that's some of the short-sightedness you may have had in the past. And I caution that that's not really, the goal isn't for a planner to directly, fund his or her position. That's really not what this is about.
The problem is to try to get something into the town might take 2 or 3 years just working at it.
yes.
So you could get all your money back in no time, or it might take you a little bit of time, but if you have the right person with the job, and I think that's the problem, is you gotta get the right planner. As Chris says, they can have different ideas, but you need to have accomplishments. And it might take 3 or 4 years before you thought you got your money's worth out of it.
Yeah. So the short answer is, the person is able to say, this makes sense in this spot, this makes
Sure.
sense in this spot, this
Yeah.
is how this town has done it this way, and it might work for Abington, whereas, we can't spend all day on listservs and talking to other planners and finding out what other towns are doing. They can come back and say, this is really what you guys should be doing, these are the best practices. It helps that way. And, do we need 3 residential zones anymore? I don't know.
Right.
But a planner would be able to say, yes, you do, no, you don't. If you really want to get investment in downtown district, this is what you can do. You can talk to the landowners. These are the grants that are available, or financing mechanisms are available. The site can leverage stuff. This is all stuff with their expertise.
Can I
There is
ask,
no question that many planners want to see more and more housing in smaller areas and more open space somewhere else to compensate for it.
Conservation subdivisions are pretty big. The problem is now you have density issues in terms of, property values, and again, it can work very well, but it's an art form.
So one of the issues is that Abington is not running out of space, but it's starting to get smaller,
Crampy.
starting to get crampy. So that they're going to be more likely to look at less optimal plots as to where they can possibly build. You're starting to see this now, where people say, oh, I was always told that was conservation land, or that was always wetlands, they can never build on it. Well, there's now rules and techniques of building over stuff that are less invasive, but it means that the projects become more challenging. And to have a person with this expertise be able to say, these are the protections you need, this is, or just to talk to the developer on the interference and say, this isn't going to work, you need to come back with this, this and this, or
Right,
something.
right.
It saves time, saves aggravation, et cetera.
Joe?
I'd like to interject something, 2 things. Actually. One of them is, I think what the towns are gonna see, and we're starting to see it now, is increased pressure from the state for what they consider smart growth and affordable housing. That's the bill Governor Baker has trying to go through the legislature. And that's gonna become an issue. They're gonna be pressuring the towns to do things. If you don't have a plan or somebody to deal with those issues, how do you respond? You can't be, it's very difficult for five volunteers to try and deal with those issues and to keep the state happy, especially because the state, we pushed by other advocates, pushing, well, we want more of this and more of that. And that can be a problem. The other thing I would mention is when we first hired a planner in 2000 and 2001, that was in reaction to a crisis we had because we didn't have a plan, nobody was coordinating different things. For those who didn't live in the town, you may remember the problem on the reuse center, those plans for up on Route 18. Nobody was, the Board of Health was trying to do the best they could to deal with it, but they really didn't, there was really no communication to everybody, said, here's what we're planning to do and what's gonna happen. And when the full impact of what was gonna happen became known, it became a mess in the town, and a very major outcry. We ended up spending, I would say, $400,000 legal fees to try and deal with it, because we didn't have the mechanism up front to do the investigation.
Joe, you talking about the trash transfer station?
Yes, that way, plus a lot of pottage in the town.
Yeah.
Because there's no good person who could try and review what was being talked about and how it fit into the town.
Is this one person, or is this like a whole department that would be built out to 10 people?
This is one person. I mean, in a half
But like,
dozen years, you can decide whether or not you need more planning, but I think.
The towns our size have more than that when they have this. Is it like a 5-person team? Is it like, so it's one person?
With the board.
One person
The board.
works with the board, I would assume,
Yes.
hired by the town manager,
Correct.
with the input of the board,
That is correct.
I would hope.
so we want to make sure it's a good person. Is 85,000 the right amount to get someone who knows what they're doing in this role, or is that sort of like the minimum?
Oh, I saw 70,000.
Well,
70 was in the,
He said
70 was in
Well, I
the
would say that
recommended,
initially, really,
but
the
80 was in the
final stages,
requested,
and I
so
have
it's-
a final draft of
Thank
a
you.
wage and classification plan that we've been doing for a little bit. That's one of the, actually, 2 different positions, economic development director and town planner. This would obviously be one person, and the one is the economic development director position would be close to 85,000 rather than the 70. So, and once again, if it's a matter of, okay, well, we might have a wage scale from X to X, and we need to start someone at the mid-grade to get the right person, well, that's what you do. So that's why I don't want to get hung up on that number specifically, but at this time, but just to, from a budgeting purpose, just to pretty much have a good range, you know, I don't think, finding another $5,000, $10,000 is going to be, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, adding a permanent position, a reasonably well-paid professional position.
So just some of the other challenges that we have, just to quickly finish this off. There's a need for senior housing in this town. How does that fit into some of the sites that we have coming available? It's amazing. It's going to become a major issue, especially as the population in this town continues to age. Memorial Field is going to be a push to rework Memorial Field because we have some grading issues. It's looking old. How are we going to fix all the playgrounds and work everything together? This is a place where this would be helpful, especially as, we think you have 2 new Little League fields being proposed for Riffin's Dairy. So what does that mean you can do with Laidler Field and Arnold Park? And that's the sort of thinking that this person can kind of work with, is what's the best use of all these recreational facilities as well. 123, we have some safety issues. Old Colony Planning has done a study on the 123 corridor, and there's, I think, 2 or 3 intersections in Abington that are major concerns for safety. Out on Green Street and Brockton Ave, 123 and Center Street and Washington Street. A lot of accidents, needs some work.
Like by Bailey's, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
It's an odds intersection.
Yeah.
There
used to be some signs. I think the signs fell down a bunch of years ago. Frankly, they never got replaced. But
There used to be a no turn on red, I think.
Yeah.
Now it's gone.
But particularly if you think out by Green Street, where it's basically, it's a
Yeah, it's a very
five-lane
weird,
intersection.
it's a very weird
And
intersection.
It's very wide, and there's a great light.
And it's a hill.
So, the places like the Chestnut and Hancock Street intersections. So, I mean, all of these are areas of need in the town where a planner, economic development person can help identify what are the funding opportunities, how can we work this all together, et cetera. And frankly, this is all stuff that someone has to do all this at some point. And whether or not it's going to be the town manager, it's going to be the board of selectmen, it's going to be the town planner, someone has to do this work.
Yeah.
And by having someone like a town planner on board to do it, you then free up the town manager and other boards and other department heads to focus on other topics.
Yep.
I would also add that in my experience, the town planner really becomes the right hand of the town manager's office. It has to be very well coordinated, because the resources you're looking at from many years down the road, they have to be coordinated very, very carefully. So it really is. In the last several years, some of you know that, we've spent our efforts and resources meeting other needs. We've had about 5 police officer positions between the new officers and absorbing old grant positions. That was very expensive. We had some collective bargaining work to do, very expensive. So it's time for this. Yes, we had other priorities, but this is something that's been on the burner. We had even a couple of years ago, I had some conversations with some of my peers in other communities about, sharing a position, using some grant funds, community compact funds perhaps, but it never really, it wasn't something that other towns are very receptive to. Now, once again, whether that's an effective way to do it, it would have been a foot in the door, and that was what I had hoped at the time. So,
What towns have this, which towns don't? Just a quick one of,
and town planners?
yep, all of them?
No,
No.
I wouldn't say all of them. I mean,
No, I would say Weymouth,
Wait,
Weymouth
comes
has.
to us and tell us how we
Yeah.
should run our department.
Situate has one.
Yeah, so you can go around it more towards the South Shore, coastal, they all have town planners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can tell, that's the reason I was just asking, you can tell when you drive through.
You can-
Hanover has one.
Exactly, you
Yeah.
can tell. I would argue that when I was here in the 90s, the town should have had a town planner before that. I mean, that's just the reality of it. You can't,
So you're saying it's too late?
well, it's not too late. No, I'm not saying it's too late at all. I'm just saying that, it's hard to, undo you know. and,
Years
you know,
of-
50 years of.
Yeah, it's hard to make up
Of kind
for,
of-
Right.
Having a
What has
mishmash of.
happened.
We were
Over
lucky
decisions.
because, it's lucky, but we had a lot of wetlands supposedly.
yes.
And they were poor soils rather than wetlands. And so consequently, a lot of building wasn't done here, and a lot of, you know, you had a lot of open fields and things like that. And obviously, as time comes along, they figure out the ways to drain stuff and do things, and the next thing you know, you got houses all over the place, because that's where the developers make the most money, is with housing, not with industry, so.
Right.
So being out front, you know, on zoning, knowing what state and federal either prohibitions or opportunities that developers may have coming down the road, having a planner who's out front of that, you know, going back and having them more or less deal with, you know, you don't have a major zoning revision for 20 years. Well, you shouldn't have a major zoning revision. You should have incremental zoning revisions on an ongoing basis. To have somebody who's really out in front of that all the time is very helpful. But like I said, I'll just caution you, you're not going to see a one-for-one dollar value in terms of, you know, revenue. That's not the point. I know it's been mentioned before, well, it's a favor itself. Well, not in the way you might think.
And this is, you need private money to do this stuff. Right, like, so unless that there's grants or like funding to do, I mean,
To do which
to
things?
do what we're asking, to
Yeah, I mean,
rehab Main Street where Bemis is and make it look nice. Like, that's not gonna, I mean.
Well, there
that's
was a grant that did some of that work. over
Yeah, yeah.
there, which we
But I mean,
don't-
like, make it really nice, like, there's.
Well, I mean,
you know,
that
Well-
person would know what's available.
That's what I'm saying,
On
like-
top of it.
Yeah,
but we know, for instance, in that area, we had a business advisory group kind of met for a little while.
yep,
It's fallen by the wayside a little bit, but this is a person who can go and talk to businesses and say, maybe they don't realize there's certain zoning accommodations for their property, or there's financing availability, or, you know, state economic development grants to help fund, you know, to take their one-story building and turn it into 3 with apartments on top or
Right.
something. It's more just saying, hey, you know, there's other things you can do with your property if you wanted to, or to answer questions. But no, we're not, you know, buying out the land and then redeveloping it. This is more just how we can kind of, I guess, prime the pump and get people interested in that sort of thing.
I just like having a business in town, when we decided to come to Abington, it was not easy to find a location. And then we had to be rezoned. And had we had a planner to work with, we may have had a few more opportunities. And it probably would have been a little bit easier. I mean, the zoning board was fantastic, but it would have been a little bit easier to say, like, we really want to go here, but it doesn't look like there's parking, but how can you do it? And to have that, like, ease of access to work with someone.
And then to guide you through the
Right.
regulatory processes with the planning board.
I think it's a fantastic idea, but.
Because that in itself can be onerous,
Yeah.
particularly if you're not lawyered up.
Right.
Everybody's
Mm.
lawyered up to get through these processes.
And we like Liz Shea a lot, who's our board secretary, but
Mhm.
she works 19 hours and she's swamped just dealing with developers and
Sure, yeah.
sending emails and tracking everything down. So I mean, she can't be out there going out to sites and talking
Showing
about
property.
development. Yeah.
So one of the-
It's
so
a-
that-
It's an expertise, too,
Yeah.
professional expertise.
That brings up one of the questions that one of our members who's not here tonight had sent in. Chris,
Oh,
not
sorry.
Sean. You would know from the wording
Shame
that
on
it's
me.
not Sean.
It's a one-pronged
There's no words
question.
you don't understand,
Okay,
so.
No kerfuffles tonight.
If we add the position, the assistant position still, the administrative
Yes,
assistant
right.
still needs the increase in hours.
Absolutely.
That's regardless of adding the position or not. And
In
then
fact, it may generate.
it may
more-
generate
The need
more
for more, yeah.
administrative work.
Which would make sense.
Yeah.
And then the other question that he had asked was just to make sure that this would factor in benefits and all of that.
That
That
number
does
there
not, it does not factor
No.
in the number we see on this page, but the budget
Correct.
would factor that in. So it's not just the
Typical.
70 to 85,000 that we're
You're
looking
talking
at.
about, 35% as just a broad
Yep.
number, but 40, about 35% for benefits and soft costs on top
Yep.
of the salary.
Other questions?
So maybe FY '23.
Um,
So as I said, this is a, there are pressures that, like every year, but our goal is to keep this in the budget.
So that raises a where do we stand on the budget right now question, which you don't need to, certainly need to stay for. Do we have any questions for Wayne or Rick before we move to
Wayne made
other
2 hot
work?
dogs for me yesterday. It was amazing.
Nice.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes.
I have just one quick question. Wayne, you mentioned the corner of Shaw and Route 18, is that where the eclectic collection building is? So that's gonna come down?
The building next to it on the corner is coming down.
Okay.
The first residence on the right going up Shore Avenue is coming down.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay.
And there won't be an entrance to that. You wouldn't be able to enter that from Shore Avenue, you won't be able to enter it on 18.
Okay.
That would have been an example where having a town plan review them first would have been helpful, because the first plan they submit was terrible.
Okay.
And we worked with them, and it's better,
Okay.
but, time.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So where do we stand?
Well, where to start? Well, obviously, we don't have a presentation for you tonight, but just, as you know, we received significant action in Chapter 7. Yes.
The state was,
It's a
the
tough
state was
problem
good
to
to
have.
us
It's
this
a
year,
tough problem to have, I suppose. But
for once.
to a great extent, most of that is, it's not a earmark per se, but it is designed to meet certain goals, educational goals. So I think that, and I hate to make it sound like this, because it's never an us versus them, but you have to concede that our traditional split of operating budgets after, accounting for our fixed cost is going to be skewed more from our 67, 68%. It just, there's no way around that. But that's, in some ways, that's not important to some people. However, some of the pressures that we have since, one of the concerns about putting all that money, into the school department means we have to deal with other pressures that have come along. Number one, we're looking at perhaps substantially more funding requirements for solid waste. Up to 22% increase potentially in disposal costs for recyclables, okay? We had a markup in the budget, but it wasn't that severe, obviously. So that's one major thing we have.
So do we have to go back to Greg's plan of not recycling
I'm
anymore?
starting to like Greg's feeling. Greg's put a heck of a lot more.
I'm telling you, it's gonna happen.
The other piece of this too is that if you, the school is seeking to have approximately 7 more full-time teachers, professionals, on top of what's, that would be in addition to the current year's budget. So when you take those positions, well, you have to add your health insurance and other costs. So those would have to be absorbed into other parts of the budget. So the question becomes, to the extent that we have approximately $1 million more in Chapter 78, and I know this is a conversation that we'll be having this coming week with our finance group and the school administration, is, how much of that $1 million rounded should be utilized for
The school
fixed
department
costs.
and for the
I
fix,
know
yep.
it's a good discussion in terms of, what their needs are and what these funds are for, but these funds are intended to pay costs, not just salaries, but the full
Yes.
cost of these services. So finding that middle ground is what we hope to do this coming week. So, but if you look at it just on its face, if you're looking at another couple $100,000 in that potentially for solid waste, and then another, you're talking about $20,000 for a family health plan, and that's 7 positions.
Yeah.
You can do the math. So suddenly we go from what looks like a pretty much on the mark to
To not quite.
$400,000, legitimate problem, not really the paper deficit that we
Right.
talked about. So, to the extent that we find that middle ground, in terms of how to use the Chapter 78, it helps us get a lot closer to, the bottom line, because we've still been reasonably conservative with our revenues. So we obviously have some room there we can work with. So in a nutshell, is there anything else you would add, Sue, to that? I think pretty much sums it up for the moment.
Well, the reason why we're betting so much more in chapter 78 is because the students
The
are
student
coming back.
population.
Right.
I think,
Over the last 5 years since the school has been built and open, we've paid about $800,000 less to South Shore Boat Tech.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because last year, it was like $250,000 less, so it's been
Yep.
dramatically decreased. And
And I was,
those students have to be educated in the Abington school system,
Yep.
which is a good thing.
Yes.
I'd rather be keeping the dollars here.
And this is still an affordable town, so the town's somewhat affordable. People are gonna continue to bring their kids here.
Well, we got 350 affordable units going in, right? So there's gonna be,
Well, yeah, that doesn't truly help.
well, but we're gonna get more students, so more aid theoretically in the future, right?
Well, yeah,
Ish.
unfortunately,
it's not a dollar for dollar
no, that's,
thing
you
with
know,
the state,
you hate to
so.
call kids losers, but, residential development is not, it's not positive.
Right.
It's not
Okay.
positive. The other thing. I
Uses
think
more
when-
resources.
Correct, that's right.
Let's phrase it.
Exactly. So that's the
Calling the
beauty
children of
an
Abington
aging
losers.
population. There'll be less kids to educate. Unfortunately, you don't have the cost of caring
Mhm.
for our seniors, so it's a lose-lose proposition as you go through life. You will see, when the school makes its presentation on the 14th, I believe.
Yes, correct. 10 days from today on a Saturday morning, we
Yeah,
will be
that'll-
here with the
that'll be,
schools. Just a
some of them
reminder to
I-
everyone.
I mean, you already know the big picture, but in terms of, I guess the details and the goals of the state and, the new chapter 75. Just the only other thing, as you know, this year we did very well in chapter 70 for the current fiscal year. We took a leap of faith 2 years ago, and we all agreed we were going to go towards a full-time
Full-day
kindergarten program.
kindergarten.
And yet we all put our faith that the state funding formula would stay consistent for another year or two, and it did. So we had a sigh of relief this time last year. But as you bring more and more students in, I think you'll be ashamed to tell you that the school, this brand-new school,
It's crowded,
it's crowded.
It is.
overcrowded.
And people have said
And it
that.
has the most problem.
I'm sorry?
And it has the most problem.
The brand new school has a
Yeah.
mouse problem?
The brand new school does and Beaverbrook does. They're just running around.
Excellent.
Well,
All the kids love Mickey, so.
there was something I was gonna say. Oh, yeah, the one thing I just want to add is that, because I've heard that, and it's true, that the numbers in these schools are already, the town of Abington didn't do population projections, for building the new school. That's done by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the School Building Authority. The building, the size, the design to a great extent is dictated by the school building, SM.
The
Thank you.
MSBC,
So,
SBA.
MSBA.
School building.
I always confuse it with the MSPCA,
Yeah,
so.
well, now that you've got the life problem. So I guess, in terms of it, it's not a matter of,
Fusion.
I just think it's helpful for people to understand that a lot of the things that people may find, inadequate so quickly, that's, SBA, in terms of how they dictate projects have to be, forwarded. So that's me passing the buck, so. Anything else?
Sounds like there's a new school going up soon.
Yeah.
Other questions about the overall state of the budget right now?
That's not where I was going.
All right, moving to our second section of the agenda to try and go through quickly. There is no correspondence this week. We had no mail.
I think
Do we
they
have-
watch the videos.
do we have any liaison reports?
No, I haven't had a chance to get with that sheet metal on the.
I have been, Justin and I have been emailing with the superintendent, Peter Schaefer, going back and forth on some of the information. He provided a little bit of a sneak preview, which I had forwarded on to you guys, of what we were just talking about with the new funds. We were asking some questions, so sort of stuff to be prepared to talk about when they're in. South Shore VOTEC numbers and a handful of other things. Nothing much solid to share, other than that we're communicating and they're prepping things on their side. So if you do have anything that you want to know specifically from the schools, let me know and I'll make sure to have them prepared for it. Anything from the town manager search committee?
The interviews should be completed on the 9th of March, a week from last, a few days.
5 days.
It's late, exactly. I don't know. And shortly thereafter, we'll be presenting 3 to 4 candidates to the Board of Selectmen as per the town charter.
All right.
But no, it's otherwise going very well. It's kind of wrapping up. It was slow progress last year, getting everything kicked off, but now it seems to be
Full speed
moving
ahead.
right along. So yes.
All right. Anyone else? Any reports? We do have meeting minutes from our meeting last week, February 26th, 2020. Justin and Joe were not here.
Do you have the people?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion and a second from Greg. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes so expertly prepared by Deb? All those opposed, abstaining? They are approved. Our next meeting is next Wednesday, the 11th. Trying to remember my math. Add 7 to today. Next Wednesday, the 11th, we will then be meeting on the 14th, Saturday, as we mentioned, with the schools, and then the 18th should wrap up our department head meetings.
What time is that Saturday?
9 a.m.
9, okay.
Right here in this same bat time, same bat channel.
And full breakfast is being provided, catered.
If by full breakfast you mean water.
That's exactly what I meant.
BYOB.
BYOW. Are there any other points, comments, motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn in a second. All those in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned.